Hi, it's Hans at ahappierman.com. Today's topic is some more weight training issues. I don't really like to call it issues, but I don't know what else to call it right at the moment, because issues I don't like, because that would mean weight training isn't a good thing. Well, it's a great thing for you as a man, a young man, a middle-aged man, and an aging man. It's a great thing for women too. It makes you strong. It improves your quality of life, your confidence, everything about your life. It's just, I just don't think it's fair to not talk about some of the pitfalls. Now, I have another video about weight training limitations. This is kind of maybe a little bit of an expansion on that. Like I'll just go, a couple of the issues I have is your hands will be a kind of a limiting factor. The strength of your hand, your hand power, your hand strength will limit your weight training capacity. It's almost like your body will be able to do certain things, but your hands will not. They're kind of a limiting factor. It's kind of why it's good to start weight training young in life and then keep going and not take big, long, significant breaks. Because I think if you start young in life with the weight training and don't take a lot of breaks, your hand strength and power and your hand power capacity will gain with you. I think your body will adapt better to the weights than your hands. And the reason, some guys, they might have a little bit bigger hand, fingers, wrists, and they'll be able, their hand power will gain with their body power. And if it's just a difference between a guy who has a physical job or spends some tremendous amount of time doing physical things, his hand and forearm and even arm size and strength will be much more than a guy who does not. So that's why you'll notice that, like, farmers, tradesmen, carpenters, guys who work with their hands all the time, or who do physical activity a lot, like on the daily, they're going to have like stronger hands, and their forearms and stuff are going to get bigger and stronger and able to not be a limiting factor. But see, that's not most men. Most men are going to have like a soft job where you're not really, you're pushing a pencil, you're tapping a keyboard, you're holding a phone, you're sitting around a meeting, you're not really using your hand. You don't need any hand strength for that. And in fact, if you want to be really good on the computer, you don't want big, bulky hands. You want, small fingers. It's a lot easier to work all that electronic stuff with smaller. And so most, guys, most of us do that. So you just don't have the hand size, hand strength, hand and finger power. Okay, so since that is true, you, as a guy trying to lift weights for yourself, have to understand that your hands are going to be a limiting factor, that you're not going to have the strength in your hands like a guy who does physical work all day. You just will not. There's no way to overcome that with your lifting regimen. Like I always am trying to work my forearms and wrist and stuff a little bit here and there, and I do the deadlifts, and but still, my hand size and strength is limited. Plus, some people get this problem with their hands as they get old. I think they call it Duprene's disease, and I think I have it. My dad had it just terrible. A couple of uncles on my mother's side had it, so it's genetic to me, where your fingers kind of start to curl in and you can't uncurl them. And so my hands, I don't have like a full range of motion in my hand. And if you have this, that's not good. So you're kind of always stuck having to work around your hand power limitations and your hand and wrist limits. So occasionally my wrists are a little bit touchy, so I have wrist wraps. I wear wrist wraps when I do my bench pressing and my overhead pressing to give me a little bit of strength, a little bit of extra stability in my wrists. And then you really want to use the starting strength style overhead press and bench press, because that takes a tons of strain off your wrists. And I cringe when I see guys who don't do it this way in the weight room, where their wrists are like bent back like this, and you're carrying the bar in your fingers when you're doing bench presses or presses. That's the exact opposite of what you want to do. You want to carry the weight in the meat part of your hand, but even with that, there's going to be some wrist strain, and you have to understand that, and you probably need wrist wraps, and you probably have to back off the volume of work you do, and you probably got to back off probably a little bit of the weight too, and the reps and all of that, because your hand, you don't want to damage your hands and wrists when you're weight training, because that's going to be most impactful for your job, right? You got to be able to tap the keyboard and use the pen and all of that, pick up the phone. So you want to be darn careful, and I talked about that, even doing your squatting, where you don't want to get pinched, you don't want to get hurt. Weight training is supposed to be something good for you, not something where you're pinching your hands, where you're getting cuts and scrapes and bruises and beat up all the time. And so that hand stuff is crucial to you. And even if you're like a guy with great big paws and a great big forearms, if you overdo it, you're probably going to hurt yourself, and you should not do that. You should not do that. I don't want that for you. You will notice that, like the big bodybuilders, and they usually get great big. Their hands will get big along with their bodies, and that's from the constant weight training. Will do that to you. Plus, I think steroids do make your hands somewhat bigger too. But I think it's like this constant, right, where you're constantly working out multiple times a week. So probably, my idea of trying to go down to 2 days a week to save your overall body from getting excessively beat up, it's counter to this building up your hand strength. But I'm just suggesting, think about it. Think about your hands being the limiting factor. Another limiting factor are your whatever other joints, right? Your shoulders, your elbows, your knees, your hips, all of these things. You want to be very aware of while you're weight training. You want to be very aware of them, how the potential for these things to get hurt in your normal daily life are there. And those are the things that's going to most impact you that's going to most hold you back from good productive weight training sessions. Those are the things that are probably going to get hurt while you're weight training. You're probably going to get a sore elbow a lot more than a sore bicep. You'll probably get a sore shoulder a lot more than a torn pec. Probably going to hurt your knees a lot more than you're going to hurt your quads. You get what I mean? So knowing that, all of those are reasons to carefully control the volume of work you do, to carefully control to avoid doing reps sloppy, and the sloppy reps usually come when you go excessively high repetitions or doing extra sets when you're already beat. So as good as weights are for you, they can hurt you if you aren't aware of these things. You don't want to have that in your mind of you're impervious to pain. And that was kind of a stupid thing I used to think of as a younger man, because I was the guy in high school football, always played all the time, even though I was hurt. It wasn't a thing to come off the field, and you kind of wear your injuries like a red badge of courage, and then you wake up 30 years later and your neck is in terrible shape. Well, you don't need all that. So you're not impervious to injury. Take time to heal when you get injured, and be a little more careful. The hand, the injuries. What else? Sometimes it's as simple as eating properly right before your workout. When you're going to do some heavy squatting and deadlifting, you want to feel your belly and your bowels. You don't want to feel like you have to go to the bathroom, right? When you're coming out of the bottom of a limit squat, you want to feel like clean and light and not full of food. Same with the deadlift. It's a very disgusting thought. It's very irritating to think of, but you should think of it, that you would want to be properly eating prior to those types of lifts. Those are some of the main limitations that I can think of that you should give those some serious thought. All for now.